Welcome to the exclusive members only behind the scenes experience for the God of War Pantheon Saga video that was released a couple weeks ago from the time of me recording this. This video is meant to take you through that video's entire production process, which is the idea to actually producing it to its final release, and all my general thoughts for the big things that I decided to do inside of the story. To start everything off, how did I get the initial idea for this video? Well, it was simply me talking long enough until I got a cool idea. See, after finishing Ragnarok, the game felt very conclusive and I had no idea where the franchise was heading going forward. So while I was talking to my friends, I came up with some cool ideas for how the franchise might follow Atreus next, and then how that might connect back to Kratos, and then how the whole entire next saga may conclude, with it answering some of the questions that the Norse saga didn't really address as in-depth as I wanted it to. But with me saying that, you may assume that when I was talking to my friends, I basically just came up with the video then and there, and then I just turned it into a video and then released it. But that's actually not at all true, because the idea I came up with when I was talking to them is almost completely different to how the actual video turned out. My initial idea for the next saga in the God of War franchise was actually going to be a total of 3 different games, starting with an Atreus solo game that would have him in Irish mythology, and the whole entire idea of it would be him finding the giants, but the secondary plot would be him discovering all the mysteries behind the mask. The second game I had in mind was actually going to be a prequel where you would see Kratos in Egyptian mythology before God of War 2018. This is where you would see Kratos killing a bunch of Egyptian gods, but the few that were left alive would go and talk to the Irish gods, and in the Atreus solo game, you would see him talking to the Irish gods and they would mention Kratos. And then in the third game, you would see Atreus and Kratos fighting off against the remainder of the gods from both the Egyptian pantheon and the Irish pantheon. So as you can tell, my initial idea still has the same skeleton as the final product, although there were a ton of changes along the way. The first of these changes was changing the Irish mythology to Mayan mythology because it made the game feel both more exotic and also like Atreus was just actually going on a full-fledged journey on his own, and it would justify why it's been a few years, like 5 or so years since he's left. And it was at that point when I started thinking about the actual logistics of how these games would turn out and kind of thinking a bit more in depth about them, I decided why not just make it into a video? And so that's when I actually started the scripting process, and is where the majority of the changes came from. The next of these changes was when I was writing the Atreus solo game and I was kind of thinking more in depth about it, was changing the mask from being a big plot point in the game to being something that didn't ever actually get brought up. The main reasons for this were time and difficulty, which means that basically it was taking me way too much time to find good answers for where the mask originated from and how it played into the bigger story and what it actually even did if you were to look into one of those rifts. There's so many things that play into it that I don't even think Santa Monica knows actually what they're doing with it. And if they do, then it must be very complex, and so complex that I have actually no idea where they're gonna go with it. So for those reasons, because it was taking way too much time and I couldn't think of good answers for where it came from and stuff, I just decided to scrap it entirely. And I had the main focus be on the giants and exploring the new mythology. Then it was at this point that I had to start writing about the prequel game that would have Kratos in Egyptian mythology. But the problem with this is that I never really liked this idea as I was writing it. I personally just felt like it was way too easy. It was just it's so obvious. If you're trying to think of ideas for why Kratos would kill a pantheon and gameplay wise why he would kill a bunch of gods, the first solution you might think of is a prequel where you're Kratos and he's younger and you kill a bunch of gods because he doesn't know any better because he's not yet matured like he is in 2018. There was also this looming issue that I could never escape of why they never mentioned that Kratos killed a bunch of Egyptian gods in Ragnarok in 2018. Which, I guess you could explain it as he doesn't want to talk about it, but surely Mimir and Tyr would know because they do also know about his Ghost of Sparta past, so they would also know about his Egyptian past if he did that as well. So for those two main reasons, plus a lot of other small things like me not liking the general plot of the game at all, I just decided to just scrap the game just entirely and just have it be two really well-made games just like the Norse Saga. So the idea for the video went from it being 3 games, which were the Atreus solo game, to the Egyptian prequel game, to the final game which would take place in Midgard, to it being the Atreus solo game, and then I decided that the second game would sort of take place in Midgard, but the majority of it would actually take place in Japan. So at that point, the general story was like this. You would have an Atreus solo game with him going to Mayan mythology, and he would learn that the Mayan gods, plus the Japanese gods, plus the Egyptian gods were all teaming up to go kill Kratos in Midgard. Atreus would leave to go to Midgard, and then the next game would pick up with Kratos getting his ass kicked, and then he would be sent to Japan, and then Atreus would follow him. And after doing all of that and finishing up the script and literally getting 95% of the way done with the entire thing, at the very end, I had an idea, and it made me change the entire script. Basically, I just had a what the fuck was I thinking moment, and decided that it would be way cooler and way better in literally every single way to send Kratos to Egypt, not Japan, and then Atreus would follow him. It just literally makes more sense in every single way. Like, the fans would like it more, it works better for the story. I think the characters would be a lot cooler in Egypt because most Westerners are more familiar with those Egyptian gods than the Japanese gods. I just think that would be very cool, and I don't know why I didn't think of it earlier. But yeah, I think that those are all the major changes I made. It went from being 3 games, which were the Atreus Irish Mask game, to a prequel Egyptian game with Kratos, and then it was another game with both Kratos and Atreus staying in Norse mythology, and that was just that. That was the end of the saga. But thankfully, that got changed to 2 solid games, which were an Atreus Mayan solo game, which was just generally about the giants and exploring Mayan mythology, and then he would go and return to Norse mythology and kind of check up on Kratos to find that he got sent to Egypt, and then he would go to Egypt, they would explore that whole mythology, come back, Atreus would be sent back in time, and then leave that open-ended enough to where they can make more games with Atreus as the protagonist, and he could go to other mythologies like Japan and maybe Roman mythology and stuff like that. So yeah, from that you can kind of see the entire creative process and the production of that video. It went from this very messy idea to it being a refined video, and it just all came with me coming up with ideas and taking stuff out that I didn't like and reinforcing stuff that I did like. And now we're going to get into the 2 main things that I personally feel like I didn't expand upon enough in the video, but also I kind of did that for a reason, because I was feeling sick when I was making it, so I tried to keep it short, and also I didn't want to fill the video with a bunch of explanations for absolutely everything I did. The first of which is kind of the major one, which is why I chose personally to destroy the Blades of Chaos. And I talked about this a little bit in the video, but to give more thoughts on it, I just thought it was a really good idea because the Leviathan axe is his symbol of leadership in the Norse realms, so I didn't really want to break that. And he just got the spear, so I didn't want to just break the spear immediately because of course we have less of a connection to that, but that would also just be very easy. So breaking the Blades of Chaos, I feel like worked in almost every way, because you break what his symbol of war was, you also break something that's very near and dear to you, the player, so it feels like you lost a character in a way. Personally, this was one of my favorite things that I did with the story, and when I thought about it, I was like, I have to do that, because it's like, in a weird way, it's better than killing an actual character, because you're killing something that the player will actually like use and think about, and they will feel that loss. And I just thought that was really cool. It was a way better way of showing how powerful the gods were and how like menacing they were than just having them kill some other character, which would just not have that kind of impact that destroying the Blades of Chaos would have. But yeah, I think you get it. It works really well in almost every single way. Story-wise, it's with the characters and you feeling the loss. And then gameplay-wise, it's where you lose another weapon and you have to go get a new one. So yeah, you're not like carrying around 4 different weapons, because that would be a little insane. The next thing I want to talk about is the entire like ending, with Atreus basically getting sent back in time, and then he goes and explores the world for nearly a decade, which, I mean, I guess canonically would mean that for a majority of Atreus' life, there would have been 2 of him on the world, which is a little weird to think about. But yeah, I had that idea because I was thinking, and throughout my playthrough of playing Ragnarok, I was disappointed because I definitely thought that there was going to be some sort of like time travel shenanigans going on, and then there was going to be something explaining the whole horn in God of War 2018. But when I finished the game and I went and looked it up, and there was no like side thing that explained it, I was very disappointed. So I decided in my story, I wouldn't do what the devs did, and I would actually explain it. And I kind of had all these ideas for what I was going to do, but near the end, it just totally felt right for it to happen this way. And then it set up perfectly for Atreus to go on this like 10-year journey. And that would set up other games, like I said earlier on in the video. But to be more specific, I think that the two mythologies that would be super cool for Atreus to go to, and let's say that there were only two more games and that would conclude the entire franchise, I think that one of them should be Japan because it's highly, highly requested. And I also think that the other one, which this would be very cool if it would close off the entire franchise, would be Roman mythology because that's very, very similar to Greek. They're basically just the same thing. Kind of like what I said with the video, they could hint at where he's been. So they could have Japanese tattoos, or he could be wearing Roman armor, or maybe like have some sort of like necklace that's Irish mythology based. Like kind of cast a wide net and explain that he's been to all these mythologies, and then pick and choose which ones you want to actually make games for. So it would kind of give this like really cool lore to him, and everyone would be thinking like, ooh, where does the next game take place? Because we saw all this stuff on him. I think that that's just really cool. The only thing that personally I felt was really weird with this ending was how it kind of relates with Angrboda. Because with Angrboda, it's kind of like, well, now he's like 10 years older than she is. But I don't know, maybe they have it to where he doesn't marry Angrboda, and maybe in his games he personally goes and meets someone else, something like that. I have no idea. That was the one thing that I could see why there would be like a major problem with doing that. But I also just think that the idea fits in so well that there would have to be some sort of workaround. But yeah, those were like the two things that in the video I didn't want to talk too much about because it would kind of bog down the video, I feel like. And I was also sick when I was making it, so I didn't want to talk too much and more than I had to. But the final thing I want to talk about is just a bonus thing that I kind of just thought of. So I'm going to throw it in the video. This is the image that I used to tease the entire video's existence. I made this myself, thank you very much, and it took me like 10 hours to make, so I'm really proud of it and stuff like that. And all I wanted to do is show you this image to, like, you get to appreciate it more because it took me a long time to make this. And I'm going to point out one thing that I thought was really cool that I did, which was on the right, those symbols on like the Egyptian side don't just mean nothing. They spell out Kratos. But yeah, I just wanted this image to be appreciated a bit because I spent a long time on it and I thought it was pretty cool. It's pretty awesome. Other than that, that's this whole entire behind the scenes video. This is the first type of format that I'm going to do for this. Following videos will have different types of formats. I will experiment with this a ton and just let me know which ones you guys kind of want. There's another very experimental video that's completely different that I'm going to put out on the members only channel. And it's basically all my very old funny moments videos all mashed up together. It's the very best moments of that. And it's just literally completely a bonus video for you guys. So look forward to that coming. And then the next video is going to be a Just Cause retrospective. It's going to be very long, going through each Just Cause game. So that's a little bit of info for you. And if you have any input as to what you want on the members only channel, just tell me. And I will try to put more stuff out here that isn't like main channel scripted stuff, kind of like easier to make stuff that's a bit more behind the scenes. But other than that, Hunter, roll the outro.